Florida, United States, 1943. James Douglas Morrison, who would later be known as James Morrison, his parents were George Stephen Morrison and Clara Virginia Clark. It's important to mention his father, since he was a US military man, and because of this, little Jimmy lived in several cities in the United States on different military bases. This kind of life without attachment to places or people marked a way of being Jim. From a young age he was fascinated by literature and poetry, but his love for art led him to study film at the University of California, Los Angeles. As a bonus, he was part of the same generation of filmmakers as Francis of Coppola, but a short time later he decided to focus on what he was really passionate about, poetry. So within this in mind, he moved to Venice Beach in Los Angeles, living on the roof of a building in the home of some woman. Jim entered a stage of discovery, approaching psychedelic substances such as peyote, marijuana, and LSD.
By 65, Jim was on the beach in Venice and met a friend from college named Ray Manzarek. By the way, he was 4 years older than him and they started talking about different topics. Jim took the opportunity to tell Manzarek the lyrics of Moonlight, a poem he had written. Ray was a big fan of the blues and rock of the time, so he asked Jim to sing it to him. So Ray was fascinated and asked him to form a rock band, for which Jim accepted.
Within a month, they already had a stable lineup made up of Morrison on vocals, Manzarek on keyboard, Robbie Krieger on guitar, and John Densmore on drums. With this lineup, the quartet occupied a verse from the poem by the poet William Blake, which said, "If the doors of perception were purified, everything will appear before man, as he is infinite." That's how The Doors was born.
A band that fused poetry and theatricality, taking the underground to the top of popular charts until they became legends. So, it's time to turn up the volume on your headphones and speakers because today we will bring you the story of The Doors.
In 1966, the band began playing at the London Folk Club. Songs such as You Made Me Real and Strange Days would be among their first classics. Soon they would move to the legendary club Whiskey A Go Go, where the president of Elektra Records saw them play and did not hesitate to sign them.
A small detail that must be highlighted is that the band did not use bass. During the concert, the keyboardist Ray made the sound of the bass, but in the studio they hired a session bass player. Making this clear, let's continue.
The band's first self-titled album was released in January 1967 and quickly gained popularity. The way Jim Morrison performed on stage was attracting more and more people's attention, to the point that he became a sex symbol, gaining the fame of a wild and reckless subject. This all began when he was arrested on December 10 in New Haven. Jim was doing adult practice backstage and a cop who didn't recognize him, he threw pepper spray in his eyes, delaying the show. When Jim went on stage, he started insulting the policeman in front of the audience. At the moment, he became the first rock star to be arrested on stage.
On September 25, 1967, they released their second studio album, Strange Days, an album that continued with a psychedelic line of their previous work, also composed from Jim's poetic lyrics. Songs such as People Are Strange or Love Me Two Times contribute to further expand the growing fame of the band. The second album showed that the Doors were successfully consistent and promised a lot.
Already at this point, the band was entering the peak of its success, creating ruptures between the members of the band, especially Jim Morrison, who was drowning in alcoholism. And in this situation, they started recording their album in 1968. Although the album brought very good classics of the Doors, it was criticized for its soft sound that contrasts with the strength of Jim Morrison's lyrics. However, the tense sound that had made the band famous was missed. This album was the first successful album in the UK.
The band embarked on a tour of the US and Europe, concluding a tour without Jim, as he had breakdown due for substance abuse.
That's the word, that's a very little word. Come on, let me know it. All your little hatred. You don't eat shit with ya. Adolf Hitler is alive and well and living in Miami. I fucked her last night. What are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it? What are you
Morrison wore looser clothes and took the band more in a more blues direction. His voice still didn't lose power and could make the band dazzle.
Then it came in '69, their fourth studio album, The Soft Parade, an album very different from the main concept of the band, since it adopted all the commercial pop sound, with metal arrangements, which was a new sound, which began to appear in those years. Songs that we rescued from the album is Touch Me, a Doors classic.
During the recording process of the album, Morrison continued to decline into alcohol. The result was problems and delays in the studio, increasing the cost of recording. For a moment, the group almost disintegrated, but finally the album came to fruition. Meanwhile, Jim continued to accumulate problems with the law due to his constant state of drunkenness. However, in the 1970s, the band continued with the recording of their next album that was Morrison Hotel, which contains a conceptual character taking up the blues and psychedelic rock style that represented the band in its beginnings, in addition to small shades of jazz and hard rock, this added to Morrison's lyrics, which became much deeper. The result was a complete commercial success.
The album reached a high position in the UK and US charts. Songs such as Roadhouse Blues did not manage to be successful for the time. If not, it had to take time for them to become a classic of the band. The popularity of the group was growing, as well as Jim's addictions. During the recording of the album, the lizard started consuming magic dust. The main reason was because of its producer, Paul Rothchild, who aspired in the recording studio, which would end up further complicating Morrison's life and health, and on September 16, Morrison went to court and the jury found him guilty of obscenity and public scandal. He was sentenced to 8 months of custody, but was released on appeal. The last performance of the tour with Morrison at the head, it would be on December 12th of 1970s in New Orleans.
Morrison had an apparent nervous breakdown and threw the microphone on the floor repeatedly. The band still had strength for a sixth studio album, and L.A. Woman would arrive in 1971. With this album, the band was looking to return to the blues as in their roots. Producer Rothschild did not like this at all and gave up the project, and Bruce Botnick took over the album. Although the album is considered a classic, only compared to their first hits in '67.
For others, the album was considered adult blues, but the truth behind the album is the lyrics, which translate to Morrison saying goodbye to his beloved Los Angeles, as he had in mind to take a break and travel to Paris. The album has a varied concept ranging from loneliness and death, a history of the discovery of America, and an episode from Morrison's childhood.
After the release of his sixth studio album, as previously stated, Tim took a break and traveled to Paris with his longtime partner, Pamela Curson. The reason being that he was at risk of being sentenced to prison in his beloved Los Angeles. Tim had a great time for a while, writing and exploring the city, until he found the liquor bottle again. And in one of those episodes, he fell from the second floor, and at this point, his health was very damaged. There were times when he cut up blood at night.
His last music work was on June 16, together with two street artists who had been invited to the studio. What was recorded was released in '94 on a bootleg LP, and so we arrived at July 1971.
It would be a dark day for the band and for music in general. His partner found Morrison's lifeless body in the bathtub. The cause was confusing since there was no autopsy, but the official version says that he suffered a heart attack, while other versions point to an overdose. Nothing more than saying that long live Jim Morrison.
And it can only be said that long live the Doors.
Well, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey